I bought seafood from Whole Foods, but was it really worth the price that I paid? In this video, I'm going to show you everything I bought and break down the cost of each one and let you know whether or not I think it was worth it to buy it or not. Now, the first one I'm trying out is caviar, and for each one of these ones I'm going to do, I'll tell you what I'm buying, how much I paid, and then the last line is how much it was per pound. Now, this, if I bought a pound of this caviar, would be almost $960 per pound. That right there to me means it's probably not going to be worth it. I mean, that's almost $1,000 for a pound of this caviar. Now, this is white sturgeon caviar, and I'm not really sure if that means it's a really good one or a middle of the road one. I gave it a taste and it was good caviar. I mean, it just tastes like normal caviar to me, kind of salty, and the little orbs or the little eggs too, like pop in your mouth and stuff. But overall, it just kind of has like a salty, fishy taste to it, which is good. But it actually tastes really good with oysters. So, what I decided to do was take a little bit, put it on top of this oyster right here, and then add a few drops of hot sauce to it as well. Now, the real question, of course, is this worth $59.99 or $959 a pound? I gotta say, no. The oyster would be just as good without any caviar and just some hot sauce. I think I would pass on the caviar next time. Next up is some frozen lobster meat, and it's actually from Luke's. Now, Luke's is known for their lobster rolls, but this was pretty expensive. It was $24.99, which means it nearly cost $50 per pound. And all that came in this package was actually just claw meat and knuckle meat. So I don't see why it cost that much. I defrosted it, gave it a taste, and I gotta say, this was actually really disappointing. The claws were a little bit tough, the knuckle meat wasn't that good, and at almost $50 a pound, just go ahead and buy yourself some live lobsters and save the money. Next up is smoked salmon, and I never really thought about how expensive smoked salmon is actually per pound. Now, before I get started and break down the prices, I got two different kinds. One is the Atlantic salmon, which is farm raised, and let's go ahead and start with that one first. You get 4 ounces of the smoked salmon at $10.99, and that means per pound, you're looking at $43.96 per pound. That's pretty crazy that smoked salmon costs that much. Now, I gave this one a taste, and there was like a metallic taste to it, and it was really oily. At this point, I'm kind of surprised because that's going to be my third no. This was not worth the price per pound. Next up is the wild caught sockeye salmon. It was $9.99, and that means it was $39.96 per pound, which kind of surprised me because I thought farm raised salmon was actually supposed to be cheaper than this sockeye, this wild sockeye salmon. Now, the taste was a lot better. This tastes like normal smoked salmon to me, and I was actually pretty surprised there was no bloodline, had no like overly fishy taste to it. I would definitely buy this again, and I'd say it was actually worth buying this item from Whole Foods. Next up is the famous Whole Foods $1 oyster on Friday, and these came out to $12, but it was $36.68 per pound. And that's because when I figured out how much it was per pound, I subtracted the weight of the shell. To get 1 pound of oyster meat, you're going to need a little bit over 36 oysters, so that's where I came up with that price. Now, looking at these oysters, they actually look pretty good, and they're actually from North Carolina, which is a place that I normally don't get my oysters from. Normally, I get them from the north just because I like to get them from cooler water, but this time of year, when it's wintertime, I find it okay to shop down further south of Maryland and places like that because there's less of a chance of Vibrio down in those areas when the water is cold. Now, I got this one all shucked up, ready to roll, and I was not going to put anything on top of it because I just wanted to taste the oyster itself. The oyster looked nice and plump, and the taste was super crisp and super clean. Overall, as far as oysters go, this is actually a really good deal, and I think it was worth it to buy these oysters. Next up are the Whole Foods sea scallops. Now, sea scallops are actually going to be bigger than base scallops, so if you want a big scallop, make sure you get a sea scallop. These were $17.99 per pound, and that bag contained 1 pound, so that means it was $17.99 per pound. Make sure as you take out the scallops, you take off that little piece on the side of the scallop there because it can make it really tough and chewy if you don't. Now, dry them off with a towel and then get them into a pan with butter, or you can use oil and then finish it off with butter. That's 100% up to you. What you want to do is just get a nice sear on there, and you don't want to overcook scallops because then the whole thing will get rubbery and chewy. Maybe about 2 minutes aside at the most, and then you're good to go. Now, these actually smell delicious, and I gave them a taste. They tasted super fresh. I'm always surprised how well scallops freeze, and I gotta say, these were definitely worth the $17.99 a pound price. Next up is the crispy haddock. Now, look, I know that most people would say don't buy pre-frozen haddock or fish sticks like this, but for $15.84 a pound, or the package, which was $9.99, and they're gluten-free, for me, this is a good find. So I'm hoping right now that this is actually going to taste pretty good. Now, I probably should have waited to let them cool down a little bit, but my first bite, I was surprised. It actually was really crispy. The taste was there, and for gluten-free, These frozen fish sticks were actually really good, and I would definitely buy them again. Next up is the frozen sockeye salmon fillets. They're wild caught and they're $29.99 for that big bag, but there's 2 pounds, so that means it's $14.99 per pound. Looking at these, I was surprised. The color looked really good, the texture was good, and I covered them up with some Trader Joe's rub. I know I probably should have got some sort of whole food rub or something like that, but that salmon rub is actually really, really good. Into the air fryer because a lot of people say that's the best way to cook salmon, and I was surprised. The skin was crispy and the middle was a perfect like medium for me. I was excited to give this one a taste to see if it was actually worth the purchase price, and I gotta say, it was. It had a great texture. It was a little bit on the lean side, but still super good, super easy too. Next up is some more frozen gluten-free stuff. These are honey walnut shrimp, and again, it's rare for me to find frozen gluten-free things at a store, so when I see them, I gotta try them. So it was $8.99, and that means it was about $14.24 a pound. These are farm-raised shrimp, and they actually look pretty small. That's supposed to be some sort of honey glaze, and there are your walnuts. Basically what you do is you cook the shrimp, I use the air fryer again, and then melt the honey and mix it all with the walnuts, and then put everything together in the bowl while it's warm, and then mix it all together. I feel like I had realistic expectations for this. I knew it wouldn't be great, but the sauce was okay, and the shrimp were absolutely not good at all. They had that chemical taste to them, and I'm going to say no, I wouldn't buy them again. Next up are some black tiger shrimp, and what I noticed right away when I was looking at the packaging, one, these are farm raised, and two, it looked like they actually injected them with water, which means they put a chemical in them to make them retain water and be more plump. Cost was $12.99, and this is a 1 pound bag, so that means they were $12.99 per pound. Now for me, I love the fact that they're already deveined and that it's an easy peel shell. And I keep it pretty simple when I cook shrimp like this. I just boil some water and then put the shrimp in after the water comes to a boil, turn off the pot, and then cover it and let it sit for 5 minutes. And every single time you get some perfectly poached shrimp. Now, I gotta say, I was a little suspect of these shrimp because they did have the water added to them, and I could tell they did shrink a little bit. But look, they actually tasted really good, and for $12.99 a pound, that's not bad at all. I say they actually were worth it. Now next are wild caught Gulf shrimp. A lot of people say that wild caught is best, especially ones from the Gulf of Mexico. These ones are Gulf shrimp, $24.99 for the whole bag and $12.49 per pound since it was a 2 pound bag. Now these were not peeled or deveined, so I had to go ahead and peel them. Now if you want to peel and devein a shrimp, what you do is just take the shell off, and then you can run a knife along the backside here, and if you do it just deep enough, you're going to be able to pull that vein or the poop right out of the back of this shrimp. Now, this can be really tedious because you can see how long it can take to get one shrimp deveined. That's why I normally like buying deveined shrimp, but it's really up to you how you want to deal with it. You can also use tools like a shrimp deveiner like this one here, and they definitely make quick work of deveining shrimp, but I find they really kind of beat up the shrimp itself. So if you want a really pretty presentation of the shrimp, I'd recommend using the knife. If you want to be speedy and quick and get it done fast, then these tools can be great. But if you want the best of both worlds, just buy deveined shrimp. It is so much easier to buy them that way. Now to keep it simple, I'm just sauteing these shrimp with a little bit of butter and some Old Bay hot sauce. So I got some butter down in the pan, added some Old Bay hot sauce, tossed in the shrimp, and then just let them cook for a little while. It doesn't take them long to cook because they are pretty thin and they cook pretty quickly. Maybe 3 minutes or so. Put them all in there, give them a few tosses to get them all coated and everything, and within a few minutes, you're ready to roll. Now it was time for the taste test, and the first shrimp tasted like iodine. I did some research and found out that shrimps from the Gulf of Mexico can sometimes taste like iodine because of the water they're in, so I guess this is a normal thing. But for me, I don't want my shrimp to taste like iodine, and the second one tasted like it too. I'm going to say these weren't worth it. Now we're moving on to the tuna, and so far it's pretty even. I've said 6 yeses and 5 nos, so let's see what this tuna is going to do. This is wild caught tuna, and it's actually a product of Vietnam. And the entire package cost $21.99. It was 2 pounds, so that means it was $10.99 per pound. Looking at the tuna steak, it actually looked pretty good. There wasn't much browning on the edge of it, and they were a good thickness, and each steak in there was about the same size thickness. Now to make these tuna steaks, I decided I was just going to sear them, and I made a marinade for them. I do a pretty simple marinade. It's going to be 1 cup of gluten-free soy sauce, and then after putting that 1 cup in, you're going to add a little bit of sesame oil, maybe about a tablespoon or so. And last, I like to add a little bit of mirin in there as well. Put in your tuna steak after mixing it all together, and you're going to let it marinate for about 30 minutes. I cooked this for too long on one side, so it did get a little bit more done than I would want. but it still actually looked pretty good, and the color in the center looked really, really good. I gave them a taste, and these tasted like nice, fresh, good quality tuna. I'm going to say yes to this one as well. It was worth it. Now, the next two, some might not consider seafood, but it's made with seaweed, which to me, that means it's going to be seafood. Now, this is sichi, which is like a kimchi seaweed kind of dish, and it's $9.99 or $10.66 per pound. I like putting them on oysters, and I think it adds a really good flavor to it. So, what you're going to do is just shuck that oyster, put a little bit of the sichi on there, and it gives a good amount of like umami and spice to the oyster. And I highly recommend getting some of these because I definitely think it's worth it to try this sichi on there. The other one is another seafood product, and it's going to be a seaweed salad. This one's with gochujang, but they have one that's not a spicy version. It's the same exact cost as a sichi, and I love how this one tastes as well. I think I would give the edge to the other one, the non-gochujang one, just a little bit, but this one still goes really well on an oyster. For me, I'd say this one is definitely worth it. So that means we're at 9 yeses and 5 nos, and we're at our very last one. This is imitation crab meat, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions about it. Now, it costs $4.49 for that package, which comes out to $5.99 a pound, and it's the cheapest thing that I could find at Whole Foods that would be considered seafood. The ingredient list really isn't that long for imitation crab meat, and I know a lot of people feel like this is like the hot dog of the sea that you don't really know what goes in there, but really, in my opinion, I think imitation crab meat gets a pretty bad rap. I think it's really good in salads, it's also great in sushi, of course, and just as a snack. This one actually comes apart as a sheet too, so you can take the imitation crab meat and not just eat it like this, you can unroll it and then load it up with whatever toppings you want. I took some of the seaweed salad, put it inside that imitation crab meat kind of wrapper thing, rolled it up nice and tight, and this snack right here, I gotta say, was absolutely delicious. This bite alone right here was worth it. I definitely think the cheapest seafood item at Whole Foods was worth it.